These are the Sese Islands in Lake Victoria, Uganda. As the light fades, people hurry to finish their day's work. There is no electricity grid, so no way to light the yard or any of the livestock pens. At night, a kerosene lamp is the only light available. It's a fire risk, it's smelly, and it's not even a very good light. In Uganda, just 3% of the population has access to electricity. The Earth at night, as seen from outer space, says more about our world than any statistic. Here, as in the rural areas in most parts of the poor world, Africa is the dark continent. In towns and cities across Uganda, economic growth is stifled by the lack of power. Ambitious businesses face a severe handicap. It is one of the reasons the country is among the poorest in the world. Getting energy to the entrepreneurs is one of the country's major challenges.
Energy is the engine for development. You can't talk of meeting social needs in the rural areas without energy. Today, how will you run a hospital without energy? The theaters, the diagnostic laboratories, the x-rays, in schools. Today, the bias in learning is on sciences. How can the children do sciences without energy? Water is a basic necessity for life, but you cannot access clean, affordable water without energy. So, I agree with those people who say that energy is the engine for development.
But what is going to fuel that engine? Uganda has no oil or coal, and it's landlocked. What it does have is the sun and flowing water. As over 1,000 participants from countries across the globe meet this month in Germany to give a boost to renewable energy, we report on another African power struggle, the struggle to get light and electricity. This swirling water is believed by local people to be the exact spot where the River Nile is born. Fittingly, they appear in the shadow of the memorial to the first European to reach this spot in 1858. Here, the waters of Lake Victoria spill out on their 5,500-kilometer journey to the sea. In 1954, when Uganda was a British protectorate, the Nile was dammed to generate electricity for the country's 1 million population. The Owen Falls Dam produced 180 megawatts of electricity. In those days, a civil engineering miracle. Today, overhead pylons carry hydroelectric power to Kampala, the capital. Incredibly, 50 years on, the dam is still the main source of electricity for a population that's 20 times bigger. 99% of Uganda's total electricity generation comes from hydroelectricity, and over 90% of that is from the single dam at Owen Falls. The electricity supply is a common topic on national radio.
There are so many people who are coming onto the grid and demanding electricity, yet the supply of electricity is not increasing fast enough to meet the demand.
As well as hosting the radio talk show, Andrew Mwenda acts as a consultant for organizations such as the UN and the World Bank.
The low supply of electricity is a big constraint on private sector development. And all studies they have done by the World Bank to do with studying private sector concerns, they have raised the issue of electricity as a major constraint to industries and a huge cost on industries.
Arua is on the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo and Sudan. It is one of the most deprived areas of Uganda. With no mains electricity, many rely on car batteries to power a TV or a light. But a typical return journey to recharge a battery can take a whole day and must be repeated every 3 or 4 days. There's a mobile telephone network, but recharging handsets is a headache. Most people are subsistence farmers growing just enough food to live on. Some keep bees selling their honey to raise a little cash. Maria Difonso is an entrepreneur from Kampala. She is working with the farmers to increase honey production and wants to sell in overseas markets. Maria collects the honey, blends and packages it at her factory, Bee Natural Products. But Maria's business is plagued by power shortages. Her machines need a constant and reliable power supply.
One of the major constraints we have in Arua is lack of electricity. Electricity comes 3 hours every alternate day. And that's an impossible situation for a factory to survive on. This is our processing room where the honey goes from combed honey to bottled honey. This is the first stage where the combed honey is crushed into honey pulp. The honey pulp is then brought into this tank where the combs is separated from the honey, with the combs staying in the inner chamber and the honey pushed out to the outer chamber. From the tanks, the honey is pumped into this machine, which then pumps it into the jars. The honey then flows through the filling line. The jars are vacuum sealed. The top label is fixed. The side label is fixed with the manufacturer and expiry date printed on. And from there, it goes to the receiving table where it's ready for packaging. We had to look at a three-pronged solution. We understand that there is a company that's supposed to install mainline electricity. We cannot rely on that because we're not very sure when that will happen. Therefore, we had to look at two other alternatives, solar powering and a generator use.
To finance the purchase of the new electrical equipment, Maria turned to the DFCU Bank and the Uganda Energy Fund. Starting in 2003, with $4 million, the Uganda Energy Fund is financed jointly by the Shell Foundation and the DFCU Bank of Uganda. Its aim: to provide business support and capital for the purchase of sustainable energy systems for small and medium businesses, or SMEs. If it succeeds, it will revitalize Uganda's economy from the bottom up.
Well, I think certainly in markets like Uganda and in the developing world per se, the small businesses are seen as the engine room of the growth of those economies. Without a vibrant SME sector in Uganda, for instance, then I just don't think the economy has a chance.
We can demonstrate that these local businesses can grow and develop in ways that are financially viable and therefore provide a real template for replication and a demonstration to other banks and financial institutions that they can lend money to these sectors that are traditionally ignored in ways that generate growth in their economic sectors, predominantly from small and local enterprises.
With finance from the Uganda Energy Fund in place, Maria went to Ultratech, specialists in providing off-grid energy systems. She needed a system that would be appropriate to the factory's remote location.
All the bees, the honeys, come from a part of Uganda where there is a natural aromatic honey being produced that could have been easily transported to Kampala and produced here. However, the just-in-time production gives it an edge over any other honey that's on the market here. There are many factories that produce honey, pack it where the infrastructure allows it to. However, she wanted to go beyond that. She wanted to make a honey that was right at source, and therefore we had to take the infrastructure there.
Ultratech installed a 3-source energy system. Solar energy gathered from the roof of the factory is converted by these panels into electricity and stored in a bank of batteries. This is supplemented by mains electricity taken from the local grid as and when available. A compressor in the factory needs high ampage on a temporary basis, so a diesel generator was installed to provide power at times of peak demand.
Welcome to enjoy happy day. Sell officers, you are welcome to enjoy happy day.
The orphanage at Arua benefits from keeping honey production local. There will be employment opportunities at the factory, and with an eye to supply, Maria encourages the kids to keep their own bees.
Wonderful day today, wonderful, happy day, wonderful day.
And of course, it's a source of cash for desperately poor farmers.
This money is going to help a lot, especially in educating my children, paying their school fees, and then it will help me to complete my house, which I did not complete. And then if possible, I will have a car.
At Bujugali, the Nile cascades over a series of spectacular falls. The site is now Uganda's #1 tourist attraction, surpassing even the mountain gorillas of Burundi. It's a popular whitewater rafting venue, with 6,000 people shooting the rapids every year. The World Bank has agreed a $560 million loan to dam the Nile at Bujugali. If the project goes ahead, it will kill off the tourist trade, as well as displace an estimated 2,000 people. Its role in lifting the income of the farmers is questioned.
Going for big projects requires huge investment of money. And the only way to recoup that money is to have electricity highly priced. But that would not meet the government needs of rural electrification because the rural poor would not afford.
Centralized electricity generation requires an electricity grid for distribution, of which Uganda currently has less than 10,000 kilometers. Yet 80% of Uganda's population, together with 80% of the country's economic production, is in the rural areas. Mike Bess has worked on African energy issues for many years. He does not underestimate the importance of the rural areas to Uganda's economy.
Rural development in economics, rural development in services is really what's going to transform most of Africa. It isn't going to be megacities that are sprawling all over the urban landscape. And that's really the issue here, is how can we transform rural society? How can we transform the rural economy, rural service sector, in which it does make sense to invest, stay, and reinvest in those areas?
The Elgon mountain range is in the east of Uganda. The area is far too remote to stand any chance of benefiting from electricity delivered by a grid. The World Bank's best estimate is to reach just 10% of the population with grid power by 2010. Mbali is the regional capital. The DFCU branch office in Mbali offers local businesses an alternative through access to the Uganda Energy Fund. Leasing is a crucial component of the fund, enabling small businesses access to corporate banking.
Small businesses normally don't have securities, collateral, which they can mortgage to the banks to get loans. Now, leasing solves that problem because you don't need to have collateral to get a lease. The equipment itself is the security in the transaction.
And security has another meaning here. It's vulnerable to rebel raids. This girls' school in Soroti, north of Mbali, was recently attacked by killers from the Lord's Resistance Army.
We're supposed to have cleared the loan by last year, around June. But the sudden attack of the rebels in June made the girls go to their homes, and most of the parents withdrew their children away from here.
We had a problem accessing Soroti because of the rebel infiltration which was there recently. And when they don't pay, you cannot blame them for that, because surely their business has been cut down.